Saving Private Ryan, movie versus history. Saving Private Ryan is one of the most famous and raw war films ever made. The renowned director Steven Spielberg captured the horrors of war in such a brutal way that the machinery of war has never been portrayed more strikingly and repulsively, reminding audiences of the terror and cruelty soldiers experienced in World War II battles. Sit back and join us as we take a look at the differences between the war movie, Saving Private Ryan, and the historical reality surrounding D-Day. The central character, James Ryan, was entirely fictional, even though the story was inspired by the real-life case of the Niand Brothers. Preston and Robert Niand enlisted in the US Army before the war began, and later, their younger brothers Edward and Frederick followed suit. At that time, a directive was already in place prohibiting siblings from serving together in the same unit to minimize the risk of multiple family losses, which could damage civilian morale at home. Thus, Preston served as an infantryman in the 4th Infantry Division. Robert was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne. Edward served as a pilot in the Pacific, and Frederick joined the famed 101st Airborne. The events that followed resemble the story in Saving Private Ryan, although they were spread over a longer period. In May 1944, Edward was shot down over Burma and listed as missing, which, for his superiors, was equivalent to being killed in action. Robert died a month later during D-Day, and Preston was killed the next day, also during the Normandy invasion, where Frederick also parachuted in. Because all his brothers were believed dead, Frederick, the last surviving sibling, was pulled from the front and sent home. However, unlike the dramatic rescue mission portrayed in the movie, Frederick was simply found by a chaplain from his unit, who informed him of the situation and the reason for his withdrawal. Frederick was then promptly sent home. As mentioned, the directive that prohibited siblings from serving in the same unit was enacted after a tragic incident on November 13, 1942, when a Japanese submarine struck the USS Juno, killing 5 brothers, George, Francis, Joseph, Madison, and Albert Sullivan, who had enlisted together after Pearl Harbor and specifically requested to serve on the same ship. Up until then, military leadership generally viewed such requests positively, believing that brothers would fight harder to protect each other. The Sullivans weren't the only sibling group aboard. There were about 30 similar family pairings or small groups on the ship. In a world where the war was now being closely covered by the media and used for propaganda, stories about grieving parents who had lost all their sons were undesirable. This led to the implementation of the sole survivor policy, which enabled soldiers like Frederick Niand to be sent home. However, even under this policy, the US military, an organization that viewed its soldiers as essential resources, would never have risked the lives of 8 men, including a valuable officer and skilled specialists, to save one ordinary private. In reality, efforts would have been made to locate and extract Private Ryan with as little risk as possible. If that wasn't feasible, as tragic as it might have been, the Army would not have gambled the lives of 8 soldiers for 1 man, even if he met the criteria of the sole survivor policy. Given that James Ryan's character was loosely inspired by Frederick Niand, whose story and extraction from the front lines were nowhere near as dramatic, it's no surprise that the rest of the characters are completely fictional as well. Unlike Ryan, they don't even have partial ties to any real individuals. Whether it's Captain Miller, portrayed by Tom Hanks, Capazzo, played by a young and long-haired Vin Diesel, or any of the others in the band of brothers, they are all purely inventions of the screenwriters. If there's one thing Spielberg's war epic Saving Private Ryan is widely praised for, it's the visceral and realistic depiction of the D-Day landing at Omaha Beach. The shoot lasted 4 weeks and cost about $11 million. Thousands of extras participated, many of them Irish Army reservists, since the scene was filmed on a beach in Ireland, modified to resemble Omaha Beach. Spielberg also hired about 20 to 30 amputee extras who were used in brutal shots of soldiers losing limbs during the landing. These efforts helped him portray the raw brutality of the battle and weaponry so effectively that the US Department of Veterans Affairs set up a special free support hotline for 2 weeks for veterans who felt strongly traumatized after seeing the film. Hundreds used it. However, the scene does contain one subtle inaccuracy. In the movie, the soldiers landing on Omaha Beach are shown expecting heavy resistance. They're preparing to jump into water over 6 feet deep and brace for a difficult fight. But the real reason the battle on Omaha Beach was so bloody and hard for the Allies was precisely because the preparatory bombing had completely failed to take out German defenses, particularly the machine gun nests. The Allies had not expected this. In fact, they anticipated a relatively smooth landing and rapid advance, as had happened on the other beaches, Juneau, Utah, Gold, and Sword. So, on the morning of the landing, US troops approached Omaha with confidence, expecting minimal resistance. The ferocity of the defense and the size of the German force waiting for them took them completely by surprise. Another creative liberty taken in the film involves spatial and temporal distortion. For instance, the movie makes it seem like the distance from the shoreline to the bunkers was only about 50 meters, while in reality, soldiers had to cover approximately 400 meters under fire. Breaking through German lines didn't take 20 minutes, as suggested in the film. It took several grueling hours, particularly due to the widespread barbed wire entanglements. Ultimately, the real battle was an even greater challenge for the Allies than Spielberg depicted. Still, his cinematic achievement deserves admiration. Despite its historical deviations, the landing scene was highly praised by experts, especially for its sound design. The pinging of bullets against metal, rock, and sand was said to be highly realistic. But even here, Spielberg made a common Hollywood mistake. In one underwater sequence, we see American soldiers hiding or drowning beneath the surface, while German machine guns fire volleys underwater, and bullets travel in straight lines for several meters, killing men beneath the waves. In reality, bullets don't behave that way. No matter how powerful the gun, a bullet rapidly loses speed upon hitting water and quickly veers off course. The water's resistance is so great that a bullet typically travels only a few dozen centimeters underwater before becoming harmless. While special underwater firearms and ammunition are being developed today, neither the German nor American armies had such weapons in World War II. Since we're talking ballistics, here's another small issue. In the movie, German machine guns rain down constant fire from defensive bunkers, mowing down Allied troops. The Germans are using MG-42s, which, like any firearm, heat up during extended firing. And due to their rapid rate of fire, MG-42 barrels heat up even faster than usual. Prolonged continuous firing without pause would cause the barrels to overheat, potentially to the point of melting and rendering the gun inoperable. Proper operation requires firing in short, controlled bursts. German officers specifically instructed their gunners to use this technique. Another option was to change out barrels mid-battle, but this detail isn't shown in the film. Lastly, there's the much-debated sniper scene. Private Daniel Jackson, played by Barry Pepper, manages to shoot a German sniper straight through his scope and into his eye. It's a jaw-dropping shot that many viewers question. Interestingly, history lends some credibility to the moment. The legendary US sniper Carlos Hathcock reportedly made a similar shot during the Vietnam War. Hathcock was a fearsome marksman with 93 confirmed kills and an estimated 400 total, including a kill at a distance of over 2 kilometers. However, even if Jackson were that skilled, the physics here are a bit suspect. The shot was made from over 400 meters away. At that distance, gravity pulls the bullet downward, so the sniper must aim slightly above the target. Given that bullet drop, The trajectory would make a clean shot straight through the enemy sniper's scope virtually impossible. The bullet would already be descending and would likely hit the scope at a downward angle, not pass through perfectly. The filmmakers of Saving Private Ryan made several small missteps when it comes to the depiction of certain uniform details and equipment. Some might even say the fashion of both American and German soldiers. In the film, we see many paratroopers, and in some shots, a few of them are wearing black high-top jump boots. While this might seem like a minor detail, it's historically inaccurate. American paratroopers were only issued brown boots up until the 1950s. At the time the film is set, black high-top boots were simply not part of a US paratrooper's standard gear. We also see soldiers in the movie with a white spade-shaped insignia on their helmets. This may not raise eyebrows for the average viewer, since such markings were common for identifying regimental affiliations. However, the spade was exclusive to the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Other regiments had different symbols. For example, when we first meet Private Ryan, we also meet Corporal Henderson, who belongs to the 501st. Yet he too is shown with a spade on his helmet, when he should have had a diamond. German soldiers in the film were also portrayed inaccurately in terms of hairstyle. We often see them with completely shaved heads, which today is closely associated with military style. However, during World War II, a hairstyle called the Prussian crew cut was popular among German troops. It featured shaved or very short sides with longer hair left on top, similar to what's often seen in the TV show Peaky Blinders. It was one of the most common styles in Europe during the first half of the 20th century. This next one isn't necessarily an inaccuracy, but rather an interesting tidbit. To portray German Tiger tanks, the filmmakers used Soviet T-34s. Attentive military history buffs might have spotted this based on the arrangement of the road wheels. Real Tigers had 8 overlapping wheels on each side, whereas the tanks in the film clearly have only 5. In one battle scene, an American paratrooper jumps onto a Tiger tank and fires a submachine gun through a viewing port. In reality, this would not have been possible. The tank would have had several layers of reinforced glass, making such a shot ineffective against the crew inside. In the final battle at Ramelle, the remaining American soldiers are miraculously saved by a strafing run from a North American P-51 Mustang fighter. During its flyover, we can see a distinctive checkerboard pattern on its wings, suggesting it belonged to the 78th Fighter Group. However, at that time, this group was still primarily flying Republic P-47 Thunderbolts and didn't transition to Mustangs until almost 6 months after the Normandy landings. Moreover, the P-51 wasn't known for being a tank destroyer. It was primarily used to escort heavy bombers. The real tank killer of the skies was the P-47 Thunderbolt, which would have been more historically appropriate for this scene. This is evident when we see bombs being dropped, something the Mustang in the film clearly isn't equipped to do, lacking bomb racks or wing-mounted rockets. The aircraft shown simply wasn't built for that kind of attack. To top it off, the Mustang in the film performs a low, looping pass and attacks from behind, dangerously close to Miller and his men. This would have been a direct breach of protocol, as pilots were trained to avoid risking friendly fire. Proper procedure would have required the plane to circle back and attack from the opposite side, keeping friendly troops behind the firing line. And that brings us to the climactic battle for the bridge in the fictional French town of Ramelle, where Captain John Miller leads his squad in a fierce defense against German forces. The Americans try to hold a strategically vital bridge while facing a brutal assault. It's an intense fight with heavy casualties on both sides, but in the end, the Americans manage to hold the bridge and complete their mission to save Private Ryan. While many similar battles certainly took place during World War II, and some undoubtedly involved strategic bridges, this specific battle was another creation of the screenwriters for dramatic effect. In fact, the town of Ramelle itself is entirely fictional. During the landing and assault on the bunkers, two apparent German soldiers are seen surrendering to the Americans. As they approach, we hear one say in Czech, "Don't shoot, I'm Czech. Don't shoot, I didn't kill anyone." The Americans, not understanding them, execute the pair. According to the screenplay, these men were meant to be ethnic Czechs from the Sudetenland who had been conscripted into non-combat support units backing the German army. While this is an intriguing detail, especially for Czech viewers, it's important to note that such troops were typically deployed on the Eastern Front, not in Normandy. That's all for today's look at the differences between Saving Private Ryan and historical reality. While Spielberg took some creative liberties and the central plot was only loosely inspired by real events, Saving Private Ryan remains one of our favorite and most powerful war films ever made. But what do you think about the historical differences? Did you notice any others? Let us know in the comments.